Good morning, dear attendees and speakers. Thank you very much for dialing into today's event on the Roadmap to Hydrogen, UK and Italy strategies in the race to net zero. My name is Caroline Burley. I work at the UK's Department for International Trade and will be moderating this session today. Now, before we move on to our extensive panel of speakers, I would like to set out a few housekeeping rules. Please keep your microphones muted while the speakers are presenting to avoid interference and background noise. You can submit your questions to any of the speakers in the chat throughout the event, and we will try to address as many as possible during our dedicated Q&A sessions. The first one will be at 11:45 and the second one around 12:40 Italian time. Depending on time, we will also open up the floor to live questions if you prefer to unmute yourself and ask your questions directly. Kindly note that this event is being recorded and live streamed from our YouTube channel. And now I'm delighted to hand over to Her Majesty's Ambassador to Italy and San Marino, Jill Morris, for welcome remarks.
Thank you very much, Caroline, and good morning to everybody. Buongiorno, buongiorno a tutti. Good morning to our guests online and to our viewers on Scienza in Rete. A warm welcome to all of you. Thanks for joining us for what I know is going to be a very lively and insightful debate. Thank you in particular to our speakers, who will today be presenting our national hydrogen strategies and some of the most interesting innovation projects in this area, from research institutions to businesses. I'd just like to set the context briefly, if I may, for this discussion, because this has been and still is a very special year for UK and Italy bilateral relationships. This is what we are calling the year of presidencies. Abbiamo le presidenze gemelle. We have the twin presidencies of the G7 with the UK's presidency and the G20, which Italy, of course, is presiding over this year, and our partnership on COP26, and working together to further a global agenda that will make our societies more resilient, fairer, and greener. And on the climate agenda, of course, we're all very conscious that time is short. We have seen some really serious extreme climate events, flooding in parts of Western Europe, record-breaking temperatures, burning wildfires. So we need no reminder that climate change is progressing at a rate of knots. And the most recent IPCC report presented us with that stark reality and issued a warning. We need to act. We need to act now. Our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, when he addressed the youth delegates yesterday at the Youth for Climate event here in Milan, he said there is still time. There is still time. We can reverse this, but we must act now with urgency. And we need all of the tools in our toolkit to do that. We need investments. We need technological power, we need innovative thinking, and we need to drive an international consensus on what needs to be done. No country alone can do this, and there's no silver bullet that solves all of the challenges. So we really need broad collaboration across all governments, all civil society, businesses, non-state actors. And we also need to have a broad set of solutions. And during the G7 and the G20 ministerial meetings, there has been broad recognition of hydrogen's potential as a key enabler of a global net zero pathway. And of course, we are only a month away from COP26 itself, where countries will get together and discuss how to progress the development of hydrogen technologies, where to deploy them most efficiently, and what's required to scale them up so that they will enable us to reach net zero by 2050. So the hydrogen solution gained popularity in the 1970s and in the 80s during the oil crisis. It seemed the only way to maintain a transport network. But then oil prices went down and there was no need for it anymore. And then around the turn of the millennium, there was a surge of interest in hydrogen, but there was a lack of investment, and that hindered progress. So what about now? Well, this time it's different. Our targets for massive decarbonisation require hydrogen to reduce emissions in certain sectors where electrification will not be viable. And hydrogen can deliver sustainable green growth and sovereign energy capability with a low to no carbon footprint, which makes it a key tool for helping developing countries reduce their emissions. And hydrogen has an interesting story to tell, as you will hear from the experts. The smallest and simplest element, it can be found in the cosmos and deep in our own DNA. It's essential for life, and it also has the potential to become the cleanest and the most abundant source of energy to help us tackle the pressing sustainability issue we face today. It was the unwitting discovery of Paracelsus, the 16th century Swiss alchemist, but the first person to realize hydrogen was a unique substance was British scientist Henry Cavendish, ancestor of William Cavendish, who later gave his name to what would become the world's most famous physics laboratory in Cambridge. It was then French chemist Antoine Lavoisier who changed chemical naming for good, calling inflammable air hydrogen, the creator of water. So the discovery of hydrogen and its properties is really a story of serendipity, of study, of research, and of endeavour across different countries and different times, all of which brings us to today, where we still need more than ever the ingenuity of our scientists, of our researchers. We need international cooperation to share our expertise and learn from each other so that we can bring forward and drive that innovation, bring down the costs, have a safe regulatory environment, and really create the right conditions to develop a global low carbon hydrogen market. And I know that the discussion today will be another step in that direction. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us today for this really important discussion. E vi auguro buon lavoro. Have a good meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jill. I think we can all agree on the need to act now. And on that note, I am excited to introduce our first panelist of the day, Ms. Iona Milak, who is Head of Hydrogen Strategy at the UK's Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. And she will give us an overview of the UK's hydrogen strategy, which was published recently in August this year. Over to you, Iona.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you, Jill, for that introduction. Buongiorno, good morning. It's really good to be here, and I'm excited to talk to you today about the UK's hydrogen strategy, which was published last month. I'll just share my screen if I can. Do tell me if that is working, if you can see that. Great, sounds good. Okay. So I think Jill put it wonderfully, actually. Why are we interested in hydrogen? Why now? Why are we pursuing this? And the UK hydrogen strategy really takes its starting point from there, which is, in short, net zero. If we're going to reach carbon neutrality by the middle of the century, we can't hide anywhere. We can't have those emissions hiding in the sectors that are harder to decarbonize, in particular heavy industry, some forms of heavy transport, but also, and as Jill was alluding to, hydrogen can be a flexible source of energy to support renewables and the forms of energy that we'll need in a net zero system across sectors, including the power sector and heat, and then, as I said, industry and transport. So this is why the UK has developed a hydrogen strategy, and this is what we're trying to achieve. But also, the UK has a unique opportunity to actually capitalise on its strengths in producing hydrogen. The UK is quite well suited to producing the two main forms of hydrogen at the moment: CCUS-enabled hydrogen, or often called blue hydrogen, and electrolytic hydrogen, often called green hydrogen, powered by renewables. And we also have the expertise, the geology, other assets that actually make us really well suited to developing a robust, thriving hydrogen economy. So that's our task with the hydrogen strategy. And we do take as our other starting point the ambition announced in the Prime Minister's 10-point plan for a green industrial revolution last year to reach 5 gigawatts of low carbon hydrogen production capacity by 2030. And that could deliver total emission savings of around 41 megatons of CO2 equivalent over the course of the UK's carbon budgets 4 and 5. which is actually quite a lot of carbon saved. So you know, that's the core reason why we're doing this. But right now, there's virtually no low carbon hydrogen production in the UK or indeed globally. So there's a big task to scale up to that point where we can do that, and indeed where hydrogen can then start to play a role in our 6th carbon budget, which is a world-leading 78% emissions reduction on 1990 levels by 2035. Very stretching. Again, means we really need to tackle those emissions in industrial sectors, in transport, heat and power. So that's the task that the hydrogen strategy sets ourselves and starts the conversation on. And I think not just us, but the UK's Independent Climate Change Committee really recognises the role that hydrogen has to play in a net zero energy system and economy. And we think it could form around 20 to 35% of final energy consumption by 2050, which is about the same scale of the existing electricity use in the UK. So it's quite a task in quite a short space of time. So that's where we start. The strategy itself covers a range of areas, but I think the key points to bring out as it looks across the full value chain. So looking at what we need to do on production, distribution and storage, and then end use in several sectors, as I've said. On production, as I've alluded to, we have the UK's twin track approach, again, supporting a variety of production methods. So we're technologically neutral in this case, as long as it's truly low carbon hydrogen. But in particular, those two main types of CCUS enabled and electrolytic hydrogen production. The strategy also talks about how we will work to establish the network and storage infrastructure that we need to support a hydrogen economy and get that hydrogen from the producers to the users to actually realise those carbon savings, and starts the work in that space. It also says more, I think, than we've been able to say before on the demand side. So it sets out industry as a lead area where we expect hydrogen to play a role, kicking off from about the middle of this decade, but also in a range of other applications. And then it talks about the market mechanisms and policy to support the wider hydrogen economy, and in particular, the hydrogen business model there, which will provide revenue support for hydrogen production. And then I think the other key part of the UK strategy is looking at the economic opportunities that hydrogen provides for the UK itself, but also I think internationally. This is, as Jill said, this is a story of international collaboration. That's the way we're going to move up the innovation and technology curve and bring costs down, and the strategy really looks at that as well and makes clear that the UK wants to focus on that and wants to partner with other countries to make sure that we can develop low carbon hydrogen as an answer for decarbonisation. The other thing that the strategy tries to do, as we've sort of said, is this is a brand new vector energy carrier. We're trying to establish a new system. So it really tries to set out a shared understanding with government, with industry, with stakeholders of how we see the UK hydrogen economy developing and what we need to do to get there. So we have this roadmap, which is a bit different, I think, than some roadmaps in that it doesn't necessarily say by X date we will have Y number of applications, but it tries to set out how we envisage the hydrogen economy developing over the course of this decade and out to the middle of next decade under Carbon Budget 6. And then sets out what needs to be in place, what is the supporting policy and activity that is needed to make this a reality. And then the hydrogen strategy itself details the actions and the work that we are doing to make that happen. Very briefly, I think what that looks like is in the early part of the decade, largely kind of small scale green or electrolytic hydrogen production, very much kind of one-to-one relationships with the users of that hydrogen. And often those producers and users will be co-located or kind of close to each other and the hydrogen trucked between them. And we have some early applications in the UK, but a lot of the work is in the demonstration space at the moment. By the middle of the decade, that's where we start to see some CCUS-enabled larger scale hydrogen production come on stream in the UK. And that's where we start to see expansion of networks and potentially small scale storage, but also starting to see hydrogen being used in industry applications, a range of transport trials, heating trials, and there could be hydrogen blending in the UK at that point. By the late 2020s and by 2030 in particular, when we have our 5 gigawatt ambition, we would expect to see large-scale green or electrolytic hydrogen production come on stream, a much more diverse relationship of producers to end users, larger-scale networks connecting them, large-scale storage coming on stream, and a wide range of users in industry and heavy transport, shipping in particular, and potentially a pilot town in heat. And that will really position us for the ramp up we really need from the early 2030s to meet our carbon budget 6 targets and to position hydrogen for the role it's going to play in net zero. And that's where we might start to see a range of other newer production methods come on stream. So the role of nuclear, potentially biomass, where we would start to see potentially regional and national hydrogen networks. And that's where it gets, as you can imagine, very complex with the infrastructure and the policy and regulation you need around that. And we could see hydrogen used for heating in the UK at that point, and that decision will be taken on the role of hydrogen heating in the UK in 2026. And I think the reason we're trying to do this and set this out is, as I said, to provide that shared understanding, that direction to industry and investors, but also to make sure that we are doing the things that we need to develop the early projects in the next few years, get the hydrogen economy going, get supply chains scaling up, but crucially that we're doing that with a view to how the hydrogen economy and how the policy and regulation will need to evolve over the course of the decade to position ourselves to have a dynamic, competitive, thriving hydrogen economy by the 2030s. So that's what the hydrogen strategy tries to do and tries to set out. Very briefly, I'll just cover a few of the key areas. So as I said, on the production side, we have this twin track approach, supporting a variety of production methods. And there are a large range of projects in the UK already in the pipeline for both electrolytic and CCUS-enabled hydrogen. And the UK has abundant offshore wind resources. It has CO2 storage potential, which means that we can really do that and capitalize on that. The strategy sets out a number of things we're doing to support that. In particular, the hydrogen business model, as I mentioned, providing that revenue support for production projects, but also the 240 million net zero hydrogen fund out to 2025, and a number of innovation demonstration competitions. Really importantly, we also launched a consultation alongside the strategy on a UK low carbon hydrogen standard, and that will be crucial to make sure that our hydrogen is indeed low carbon and can contribute meaningfully to emissions reduction. And that consultation is open at the moment. Again, really briefly, on the demand side, as I said, we see hydrogen playing a role in a range of sectors. I think what you can see from here is that there's significant scale up, not just from now to 2030, but actually that period from 2030 to 2035, we really think that we need to scale up quite rapidly there. And again, we set out a range of actions and commitments we're taking in the strategy to bring hydrogen forward in those areas. As I mentioned, we have hydrogen, we'll need hydrogen and networks and storage infrastructure to make a hydrogen economy work. And we've launched a number of calls for evidence and pieces of work to try and start the work on that, to start moving technologies from innovation to demonstration stage, and make sure that they're in place when they need to be. And then similarly, we also set out the underpinning policy and regulatory market frameworks that will need to support a wider hydrogen economy. So there's the hydrogen business model and the consultation that was put out on that alongside the strategy. There'll be more detail coming forward on the revenue mechanism that will support that business model later this year. And we're looking at a number of areas in the regulation space as well. As I mentioned, making sure we can capitalize on the economic opportunities from hydrogen is a big part of the strategy. So making sure that we have the sustainable supply chains in place to support our hydrogen economy, and that we can create jobs and value from that in the UK. That we have good quality jobs right across the value chain from hydrogen, and that we have the right skills in place to develop the hydrogen economy as we need to. And I think hydrogen can play a really interesting role here in helping transition the likes of the oil and gas sector and other sectors to a net zero world. We also importantly want to maximize our R&I strengths and collaborate globally to help bring hydrogen technology costs down and move innovation along. And we also set out what we're doing to support investment and export opportunities on hydrogen. And crucially, we'll be setting out a sector development action plan, which covers that early next year. Finally, just a bit about international collaboration, which, as I said, we think is really, really important in the UK. We're active in a number of areas, in particular as a co-lead of the Mission Innovation Clean Hydrogen Mission, but also involved in the SEM Hydrogen Initiative and the International Partnership for Hydrogen Fuel Cells in the Economy. And a number of other areas. And we're also very keen to start building partnerships and increasing our cooperation and collaboration on a bilateral basis and regionally as other countries start to develop their hydrogen economies. And just a word on mission innovation, because I think there's some interest there. So this is a mission that aims to bring down the cost of hydrogen delivered to the end user through collaboration on innovation, because that's the biggest barrier at the moment to uptake of hydrogen and to realising those emissions reductions. It wants to reduce end-to-end costs to $2 a kilo to US dollars a kilo by 2030, and it's doing that through a number of areas. One, through innovation and R&D. One, through demonstrating this end-to-end hydrogen system in hydrogen valleys around the world, and then thirdly, on creating an enabling environment and bringing together that supply and innovation push, and then the demand pull, and joining with other initiatives like SEM and IPHE. So the UK is very active in that, really keen to make sure that's a truly global effort, and that we're bringing to bear the best of international collaboration and expertise on that. I mentioned briefly, there's a number of consultations which are published alongside the strategy, the business model, the Net Zero Hydrogen Fund, Low Carbon Hydrogen Standard. We also published an analytical annex and a production cost report, which set out more detail. Very happy to cover that in questions if anyone is interested. But that sets out a lot of the kind of detailed policy substance underpinning the strategy. Finally, just a word on next steps. We're fully into implementation mode now, in particular focusing on the delivery of the Net Zero Hydrogen Fund and the business model, but also doing further work on the networks and storage side, on demand, in a range of areas. We'll be setting out an update in early next year on a number of areas, including our more detail on our production strategy and on the NZHF and the hydrogen business model. But also, as I said, the sector development action plan and some details on what we're doing in other areas. And then finally, I think the next moment where hydrogen is really going to ramp up the agenda again is very shortly with the net zero strategy that the UK is going to be publishing, and with COP26, as we're all aware. And so we're looking forward to the conversation moving on there. Thank you for your time. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much for that thorough overview, Iona. I look forward to seeing the various elements and mechanisms set out by the UK strategy come to fruition over the next few years. We're now moving on to the Italian side of the discussion. I'd like to introduce Dr. Stefano Raimondi, who is Director of New Technologies and Research in the Energy and Georesources sector at Italy's Ministry of the Ecological Transition. Stefano will now walk us through the Italian National Hydrogen Strategy, which will be published soon. Over to you, Stefano.
Thank you very much. Let me express my sincere congratulations with the ambassador and with all of you to organize this particular event. I think it's very important. I'm trying to, in the meantime, to share the video. And as mentioned before, I think the dialogue on hydrogen at this particular time is very important, because we have to learn from the different experience, the different structure, different economy, and also different approach in which we could develop the potential of hydrogen into our economy, into our society. So let me explain the different way we interpreted the hydrogen in Italy. Of course, it's very important for Italian government to frame our activity into European main target to 2030. And of course, one of the most important is the four main areas in which we developed our strategy. And of course, one of the main areas is the transport, making it sustainable for all to reduce emission. It's a very big problem in some area of Europe, and particularly in north of Italy. And of course, the hydrogen could be very helpful to clean our energy system, and of course, create also the condition to regain ground in terms of environment and global climate action. This is an important factor which is linked to the SDG, particularly, and in the UN, let's say, parameter in which we commit several years ago, and we are pushing very hard on them. Of course, the hydrogen could be also an opportunity to change paradigm in terms of industrial side. Of course, it shouldn't be, maybe it's too strong the word revolution, but probably an evolution of what we're able to create in an environment of no competition with other technology. So there is no competition between hydrogen and electricity, and of course, any vectors, any technologies are working in order to decrease the emission and create a condition for a better life. Second, but not less important, is address the energy poverty from global perspective. And of course, we link the use of green hydrogen also to reduce the energy dependency, not only in with the vector as well, or the components, but also for what we call the critical mineral, which is a growing problem in when we think about the electrification of our society. This is the approach in how can we reach this target of the European target. Well, first of all, the context is very important, because since 2019 there is a strong, of course, interest and growing interest in acceleration hydrogen. On the next year, on the 8th of July 2020, the European strategy was published, and something from that we are setting up the strategy on hydrogen that could be finalized in the next weeks. Just trying to accommodate also the new target of Fit for 55 that the European Union is going to discuss. This is a very important target in which we are, I hope the hydrogen will be able to give a stronger push, give help to reach this point, in particular in evolving situation in European package. And before we are going into the strategy of the pillars of the hydrogen strategy, of course, we need to mention that there is within the European Union a strong investments we receive around 68 billion euros in order to, let's say, create a condition for decarbonize our society in different, of course, in different sectors. But let's go through how the Italian hydrogen strategy could fit into the wider national plan of energy and climate. As you probably know, Italy presented last 2 years ago the national plan that has been approved by the European Commission, but it seems to be past a lot of many years instead of just 24 months. And we have to, let's say, update the emission reduction. And in this particular area, the hydrogen strategy fit into the national plan energy and climate in order to get the best result. And of course, it is a long view. The national plan is a timeline on 2030, so in roughly 9 years left. But also we go through beyond this particular timeline and looking for the long-term strategy in which the presence of hydrogen we imagine going and to grow and fit also the best potential opportunity for the economy. So at the moment, the 2030 is already fixed to decrease the emission, CO2 emission and other pollutants, very important for the healthy environment. It's fixed at less than 50% comparing 99 level. So the VLB is a very important step for Italy, and but we are working very hard on this particular area. Before introducing, of course, hydrogen, we have to, because we are generally speaking for the first phase, we give a big chance for also the energy, the green hydrogen. So we need to reinforce, to consolidate the renewables, and then we go through these particular slides that illustrate, show how the support of the regulator receiver to produce green hydrogen. Of course, it's a comprehensive strategy investments that, of course, include other parts, sectors of the industry, but particularly the transport, particularly the digitalization, also to the new supply chain in particular areas such as the electrolysis, steam, labor. Renewables is a very important element because Italy produce roughly 40% of the green energy for the total consumption, electrical consumption, and is in a percentage is growing. And then we have also some problem to how to manage in the network. So the idea is also to produce hydrogen in order to, let's say, create less over stress on the grid, what we call the over generation. And that's an important step in which we are working together with Terna, our TSO, and other important players of the sector. But let's go through, particularly which will be the main financial tool of the strategy. Well, first of all, we will take advantage for the Recovery and Resilience Fund that comes from the Next Generation Fund made available from the European Commission, and the amount dedicated to hydrogen will be 3.5 billion euros. And of course, we will take advantage also the important project of common European interest called EPCI, and then the amount dedicated to these particular tools and project will be around 1.5 billion. And this is let's say there are other important components, probably less important in terms of financial. But what the government is interested, is keen on emphasize the play role by the research and innovation. So there are two main roles. One is mission innovation, as mentioned by the colleague Milak, and we work very hard in this particular area in which it will be developed. The next pillar on the research and innovation will be, of course, our national plan. That will be dedicated around 210 million euro into the research in order to decrease the cost to make most of the project available. But at the end of the day, it's created the condition to implement the new technology into the industry, into the residential, into our daily life. The structure of the strategy is it's quite easy, simple. And well, first of all, we will fix the evolution and the adaptation of the security rules, law and condition for the use of hydrogen, where of course there is a missing in our rules, Italian rules, and of course it should be matched what the European Union is going to design for the next months in terms of interoperability, for example, talking about network, but also create a condition for the recognition of the currency of origin. So in order to certificate hydrogen as green, and that's an important, very important step that will give also the space to the supporting measure that we are finalizing. We are studying how to best design supporting measure, because both these are the important pillars, security and supporting measure, will be the pillar to build up a market in which everyone will be transparent, clear, can trade nationally and domestically, but also internationally, the new vector. Talking about the project in which the Italian government is fixed his attention for the first 5 years, of course, as mentioned before, is the heavy transport corridor, also to introduce hydrogen into the truck and the transport, but not only that's the first step. It will be truck, of course, because in European there is a mature market. We'll see a very, very high acceleration from the producer of cars and trucks about the interest on fuel cell, and so the use of hydrogen. So for the first time, we're going to create a first national refueling station. We will be about 40 refueling stations spread out in Italy, in order to catch the demand of the truck, not only Italian but also European. And we'll see a particular slide about it. Another important phase to introduce the use of hydrogen to transport, of course, will be the railway. And we work very closely with the Ministry of Sustainable Transport in order to, let's say, transform into green hydrogen, green V6 routes. And this is the first step, and they create a condition to develop in the next decade, say, an expansion of this particular area. That's coming on. Sorry, something was wrong. I'll just finish the other 4 parts. As you can see, the brownfield sites is an area in which we call the hydrogen valley, because the structure, the industrial structure, really, Italian industrial structure is, I would say, disseminated, spread out on the entire territory. So the intention is to develop locally the production of hydrogen, and supported by the relationship with a small and medium company present on the territory, also the utility present close to the city center in order to consume hydrogen, green hydrogen produced by the hydrogen valley. In order to create this condition, we have to think also for the big industry, decarbonize the heavy industry, what we call a hard-to-abate industry. And the government invested 2 billion euros on industry, because of one of the most important areas in which the emissions are higher. We'll see later on the percentage. And another sector we want to create a condition to sustain the demand for green hydrogen. Of course, there will be the production of the electrolyzer, and it will be, let's say, split in 2 main areas. One will be the small capacity electrolyzer, and the other will be dedicated to electrolyte to the industry. So in order to, let's say, match demand for both sides. The other sector, as mentioned before, will be one of the few projects within the national plan on recovery and resilience funded by EU, dedicated 160 million on specifically on hydrogen research and development, which we are defining an agreement with the most important national centers in Italy in order to create a condition to reduce costs, but also to use the different materials and improve the efficiency. There is just a summarization of the investment that we are going to do. As you can see, roughly more than 60% of the entire budget will be dedicated to the hard-to-abate industry. It means steel, it means glass, cement plants, and also paper mills and other sectors where the emissions are so high. And I'll give you just a glimpse of the situation about an example how the transport will be. We're trying to introduce hydrogen into the heavy transport. And as mentioned before, we are going to create a 40 refilling station along the most important motorway and road of Italy, where we try to catch the high demand of the trucks, particularly connecting the motorway or the road connecting Italy with European and the north of Europe. So it means Austria and Switzerland, Germany, and so on. But also concentrate our attention in the airports. There will be a second phase. And of course, what is very important, create a condition to create relationship with what we call public transport in order to try to decarbonize the network, the fleet, and the use of hydrogen into the city. So it means also taxi cab, of course, all the people and all the cars or light van involving in the distribution of goods. As I mentioned before, as a responsible research and development on energy sector, of course, the investment on this particular area is very important. We judge as a fundamental in order to create a condition to reduce the cost, but also to use it differently and spread the use of hydrogen into our economy. And this is the main source of funding that will be reached around 1 billion euros at the end of 2024-25. And I think that the background is very important. We'll dedicate specific and deep research on this, but 4 pillars on hydrogen. Of course, there will be the green and clean hydrogen with low emission, as mentioned before. It means what we call the blue hydrogen, that we saw blue hydrogen as an alternative and complementary to the strategy of decarbonization, but not for a long time, because the cost of the green hydrogen as well will be the same level as I mentioned also from the UK strategy. Will be more or less at the same level at the end of 2030. The very important area in which, of course, we need to improve our knowledge and our skills in the storage, transport, particularly on derivatives. And of course, we are interested to develop synthetic fuel, ammonia, methanol to use for transport let's say, for ship, of course. And we are also implementing this particular study also for the future use for plane. And of course, the fuel cell is the third pillar in which we are investing considerable amount of investment, because we think it's an important step in order to allow the also different industrial sector to create what we call the new change or reconverted change, such as the production of bus and cars in the future. Of course, in order to create a condition to harmonize the production of energy and the use of hydrogen and the use in the sector coupling, and we need to develop as well the application of the smart grid and the intelligence, artificial intelligence for hydrogen specifically. And there will be an investment of around 20 million in the particular area which we are dealing at the moment. So the idea is to create an approach. Let's say first of all, there's a strong attention to green hydrogen. Of course, that's is important because Italy, as I mentioned before, have a considerable production of renewables, and we are trying to increase the presence of renewables in the next few years, and considerably with a strong investments, integration also with the new and very appealing sustainable support in terms of investment, as I mentioned by the ambassador before, and that's the create a condition to create also an hydrogen for every sector of our economy. And of course, we need, of course, investment for the private sector. We need innovation, strong push on innovation, but we need to create a condition to create a more resilient energy structure, and the hydrogen could be able to be part of this particular area. Not less important, as mentioned before, the international cooperation, in which we are tier 1 in mission innovation for hydrogen, and then there will be a very useful experience, not only for hydrogen itself, but because we are co-leader together with UK in power mission that link together smart grids and renewables, and then we can have also the common ground with hydrogen. We will be able to build something very impressive in terms of tools, but also in terms of demonstration, in terms of collaboration, and accelerate the timing to get the best result. So we share the objective, the target to reduce the cost of hydrogen, possibly green hydrogen less than we have today in a short time, and surely we'll be able to do that. So I hope the presentation is respond to your consideration, and I will be very glad to reply to any question that could arise from the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Stefano. I think it's a decisive time for the low carbon hydrogen industry on a global scale. And very encouraging to see that both countries are introducing detailed strategies, policies, and funding mechanisms to drive deployment, usage, and also international collaboration. We'll now move on to the first Q&A session. So I will check the chat for questions first. We have a question from Angelo Moreno to Iona. Angelo is asking, if I understood well, it seems that you are going to burn hydrogen to heat homes and buildings. Is the use of hydrogen in domestic residential cogeneration systems out of the strategy? If yes, why? And if no, what is foreseen to support the hydrogen-based cogeneration using fuel cells?
Thanks, Angelo. So I think the use of hydrogen for heat in buildings, domestic heat in the UK, is very much an open question. We've got a large program of work underway of trials of safety and technical and economic assessments going on to look at the role of hydrogen in heating. And as I mentioned, we'll be taking that strategic decision on the role of hydrogen domestic heating by 2026 off the basis of those trials and that work. So I think it could have a sizable role, it could have no role, and we need to base that on the evidence. But a lot of that, as you say, is looking at the role of hydrogen appliances, hydrogen boilers using hydrogen gas delivered to homes through specific networks. the use of fuel cells and that role in things like combined heat and power, I think, was one of the areas we're looking at internally at this stage and looking at as part of the work. But I think that is that's just one of the areas, and as we are able to provide more detail on the heating work, I think we can address that. But so I think open question will be based on the evidence and the work that's underway.
Thanks, Iona. We have another question for you, I believe. It's on the UK net zero strategy, asking whether that will apply to the whole sectors of the UK economy.
Yes, that's looking at the full range of sectors. How we'll decarbonise or all of those to reach net zero. But in particular, it also sets out a delivery plan for our 6th carbon budget and how we're going to meet those stringent emissions reductions. So hydrogen is a key part of the net zero strategy. It's a key part of our net zero energy mix. And so it features in there in a range of sectors, both on the kind of production side, but also the end use and the decarbonisation side. Yeah, so look out for that coming soon.
Thanks for that. We would now allow for one live question if anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask their questions directly to either Iona, Stefano, or both. Otherwise, we have another question that just came in the chat from Roland. Roland is asking, how will hydrogen investments be supported under the national plans considering the carbon intensities which are associated with hydrogen production?
I can take that briefly for the UK, and then if Stefano wants to take it for Italy. That's exactly the UK low carbon hydrogen standard, which I talked about, which we've got a consultation open on that was published alongside the strategy. That is looking at exactly that question. So we need to make sure that one, the hydrogen that is being produced and is being used is truly low carbon, but two, that the hydrogen that we're supporting through the likes of the hydrogen business model and the Net Zero Hydrogen Fund meets that threshold, those standards. All of the hydrogen that is being produced and is supported through those two sources of funding will have to meet the low carbon hydrogen standard to make sure it's properly low carbon and below that emissions threshold.
If I may, replying to the question is quite simple. The government, the orientation of the government towards the green hydrogen, and in order to get as a result, the first step is the guarantee of origin. So it means the hydrogen could be certificate produced by renewables to get this particular recognition. On the basis of the recognition, there will be different support, and this is to create a condition to develop and also to the market, create a market for the production from renewables. Of course, this particular condition refers to this area in which the intensification of the decarbonization is the higher possible. And of course, at the same time, as it happens every day over the world, the production from what we call the gray production or the blue production will allow, of course, the intensity of the supporting will be much less, of course, because it doesn't match the European rules and the Europeans target to get the reduction. So in order to move and design the market into, let's say, in the virtuous path for Italy, of course, you're talking about the distribution of renewables all over Italy and spreading more than 1 million plants over Italy. It's difficult to manage for the problem raised before in terms of management of the grid, over generation, and so. So the idea is to create, let's say, an invitation, a proposal to the market designed to create a condition for a green hydrogen in order to accelerate the process. In terms of cost, roughly in terms of investment between the two colors of hydrogen, will be very, very soon at the same level. So that's the feeling we fixed the strategy and we fixed the 5 years. And also there is another paradigm important to respect, to follow is the investments for European funding should be green hydrogen. So there are two main areas in which we have to balance our investments, but also to attract investments and create conditions for, let's say, a smooth and accelerate development of the green hydrogen into the society.
Thank you both for weighing in on this. We have one final question, this time for Stefano. Question is from Andrea on innovation. Who is appointed to evaluate innovative products in the A22 motorway project?
Well, it's necessary to start in this particular area, the heavy truck. It's very important to start the design of the market in this particular area, in which there is a strong interest from both sides, from consumer, Italian consumer, and also from the industry, in order to able to match the strong demand that is growing. Acceleration in terms of innovation, of course, creating the national refueling station grid. There is no particular one. It is interpreted as should be interpreted as a first kickoff in this particular area, and create a condition to a development of the greener ports, green airports, and also spread the use hydrogen into the big logistic company warehouse, and probably associate the presence of bigger renewable plants with possibility to use in the most economic way for hydrogen, for green hydrogen. That's our feeling. But in order to do that, we need to push very, very hard on the rules to create this condition, because there is no, in some areas, such as the railway, we are building up the rules to create a station into the area of the railway, with a particular fragile. There is quite, let's say, there are some particular conditions to be respected, and then the use of hydrogen should be treated with very much attention. So in this particular area, there is no particular innovation research. Of course, the research will be created on the development of fuel cell, for example, and in order to give, let's say, more to be more productive on the production of the electrolyzer, of course. So it should be interpreted as an investment. Thank you.
Thanks, Stefano. We will now move on to the second part of our panel discussion. I'd like to introduce Professor Mercedes Maroto Valer from Heriot-Watt University, and she will speak to us on the realization of the role of hydrogen to decarbonize industrial clusters. Over to you, Mercedes.
Thank you very much, Caroline. I hope you can hear me, and I'm going to start sharing my screen. Okay, so I hope you can see the presentation as well. I'm just putting it on a presenter's mode. Okay, and I don't hear any kind of nodding of heads. Great, I can see thumbs up. Thank you so much. Okay, so, well, thank you for organizing this event. I think it's really great that we come and talk together about one of the areas and one of the vectors energy, that hydrogen, that is going to be key in terms of reaching net zero. So thank you so much for inviting me, and I really particularly enjoy the spirit of collaboration, because that's going to be really key in terms of delivering what we need to do in the coming years, starting today, and that's a lot that we have to do. So let me start a little bit with a picture of what the UK's path to net zero. This already has been mentioned by the ambassador as well as by Iona, but I just want to kind of reflect on a couple of points here. This is our 6th carbon budget in the UK, published December last year by the Climate Change Committee. And if I'm just going to walk you through all those 3 graphs in there, let's start with the one on the left. And what you can see there is the hydrogen demand by 2050. As usual, there are different scenarios that you can construct around what this happen or what should happen. But what you can see in any of those scenarios is really that we are going to need to ramp up to produce a lot more of hydrogen than we do now. Any of those scenarios, they tell you somewhere between, let's say, 250 to 400 and even higher in terms of the hydrogen that we need to produce by 2050. The focus of my presentation is on industrial clusters, on manufacturing, construction, and as you can see there from the arrow, the blue arrow pointing, is really going to be particularly significant under any of those scenarios, the hydrogen role here. Let's move to then the slide in the middle, hydrogen demand. So this is really taking us now the pathway, the trajectory to get there. And again, if you look in terms of the manufacturing, the construction sector, even in what is called the balance scenario, even on that, we are still looking around 100 terawatts of hydrogen. And to put this a little bit on perspective, really, the new hydrogen economy that we are hoping to have in place by 2050, if you put that on a scale, is comparable to today's electricity system. So it's quite a bit of a challenge and an effort that we need to do. And then if you move to the final graph, the one on the right-hand side, what you can see in there is that the hydrogen is key, is part of this toolbox that we heard before. You know, and we need to really understand that we need to develop multiple technologies because there are multiple challenges across the sectors that we need to address. But hydrogen is going to be key. You can see in there is probably at least a quarter or maybe even a third of what we need to do to decarbonize manufacturing, construction, the industrial sector. And one point here that I think has been mentioned, but I do want to reinforce, we talk about technologies. Obviously, technologies go hand in hand with business models, with policy, regulatory frameworks. And we need to be very careful that the policy and the regulations that we put in place that actually will drive emission reductions down, but does not drive our manufacturing going overseas. So let's go now in terms of what's happening within the UK hydrogen strategy. And you already saw this diagram in the previous presentation. Oops, sorry, I think we just moved. There it goes. You already saw this diagram. Again, they keep moving. There you go. Okay. The message here is with this slide is we have a journey ahead of us to reach the targets that we have. We need to have the right place, the right volume. We need to have the right price. We need to have hydrogen available. But really, the question underpinning all of that is, where do we start? Where do we start this journey? And this is the message I'm trying to drive home with this slide. The place to start in the context of the UK and pretty much worldwide is around industrial clusters. Why this? Because industrial clusters, they already have a demand for hydrogen. We want this to be a significant potential on demand for low carbon hydrogen. And if we unlock this demand, what is going to help us is to scale up the hydrogen economy, but also what's going to help us is actually start developing clusters and start developing a network joining all these different industrial clusters of hydrogen. And this demand that we are planning and we're hoping to unlock is going to stimulate production, not only in the clusters, but also in dispersed sites that we have across the UK. For those of you not familiar with the picture in the UK, about 53% of the industrial emissions in the UK come from a handful of clusters. And the role of research and innovation is going to be key here. And I just took a text from the strategy where actually reflects quite importantly that to accelerate this transition, we are going to need the support of the research and innovation. And one of those centers is the center I'm directing, the Industrial Decarbonization Research and Innovation Center, also known as IDRIC. So let's see if I can move perfect to the next slide. So the previous slide was about where do we start? I think it's clear that we start in the clusters. This slide is really about the point of where does hydrogen fit within a much larger strategy we have for decarbonized industrial clusters. And as you can see in there, we have efficiency, CCUS, fuel switching, hydrogen in there. And all these will have to come together starting now. This is something that we are already doing in the 2020s, So actually we can deliver and meet the targets for 2050 and intermediate targets that we had before. The point I want to highlight on this slide is actually, as you hopefully can see, there is this light bulb moment there, and that's about milestones that require innovation. And within those milestones that require innovation, as you can see, we have a few of them already happening right now in the very mid-2020s, but particularly they are going to be key as there is a bit more of uncertainty in the mix of technologies that we will be deploying in the coming decades. And again, is how IDRIC can be a key place, a key cornerstone in terms of supporting the research and innovation happening to reduce costs, reduce risks in deploying technologies. So some of you, particularly in the UK, may be familiar with the Industrial Decarbonization Challenge. And the question this slide answers is, what are we doing now in the UK? So in the previous slides, I talk about where do we start, where hydrogen fits within the larger picture as well. And now is what we are doing today. And what we are doing today in the UK is we have the Industrial Decaronization Challenge. This is funded in the order of 210 million with a top up of 260 million. It has those three elements to the program: demonstrators, set infrastructure, decarbonization roadmaps, so cluster plans, and IDRIC as the Research and Innovation Center. And the point I want to highlight here is that this is, in my opinion, one of the very few times I've seen, I would probably dare to say worldwide, where we have these three elements coming together. We have a deployment, we have plans, cluster plans, and we have a research and innovation together. And this is really going to give us a huge opportunity to lead and to accelerate the transition. I'm not going into detail, but I'm sure many of you may also be familiar with the 10-point plan and also the energy strategy that they were published last year as well. And this brings together about these clusters, how they're going to be these super places where we're going to have renewable energy, CCUS, and hydrogen, and they will be at the forefront of technology development. So let me just share a couple of slides in the time I have remaining about IDRIC. So what is IDRIC? What IDRIC provides, as it says there, is collaboration at the scale and pace, and I think both are very important. And by collaborating at the scale and pace, we can accelerate the decarbonization of the industrial clusters. For those of you not familiar with the industrial clusters in the UK, you have a diagram or a map there, and you can see they cover, starting from Scotland, Grangemouth, going to Teesside, Humber, Southampton, South Wales, and the Merseyside area. Collectively, we are looking at a minimum of around 35 million tons of CO2 per year. What IDRIC has is we have 142 partners. We have received £20 million funding. And those 142 partners, you can see the breakdown underneath, but half of those are industry, and we have 23 research organizations across all of the UK. And also we work closely with associations, policymakers, and government bodies. The intention of IDRIC is to have it in there. We will have impact in a series of areas. I already mentioned about costs, risks, timelines as well, reducing emissions, economic aspects, and policy aspects. And all our activities in IDRIC, they are mapped against one of those or multiple impact areas. So how are we doing this? How we really are able to accelerate this transition to low carbon technologies or hydrogen? So we have a program where we first identify, direct, and coordinate industry-led challenges. We facilitate that industry alignment, as you have in there, and then we ensure also that the implementation of the impact is aligned and enables a fast implementation. So really it's working very closely together with our partners, academic, industry, policymakers. We have recently launched the first wave of projects. I want to highlight here the ones that are more related about the role of hydrogen, a strategic role of hydrogen. And the projects that we have launched, they cover areas around the production, storage, infrastructure investments, very important, distribution and safety considerations. And then something that it has been mentioned already this morning is around the skills and the training that is going to be needed as well for the transition to hydrogen. As you can see from there, what we have is really a whole systems approach that integrates from engineering, environmental, technical solutions, but also considering social, policy, and economic aspects. And this is really my final slide. This is part of our large-scale deployment of hydrogen systems, is part of what we call a multidisciplinary integrated program, MIPS. Is part of a toolbox of solutions. It doesn't happen in isolation. So what you can see in there is we also have a series of MIPS covering system planning, infrastructure, operating, all research and innovation needed to make this happen. So in conclusion, I hope I was able to translate to you the message in there of the urgency that has already been mentioned before. And it's really an urgency in terms of working together at the scale and pace. It's critical that we have a systems approach, that we grow our skills together, and let's not forget that by doing this, we will increase trade and will attract investment. So I'm going to stop here. This is my last slide. You have our contact details there. Please visit our website because there are opportunities to engage with this first wave of projects, helping us to scope a second wave and also build partnerships together. Again, thank you very much for your attention, and thanks very much for inviting me and having me here today. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you, Mercedes. It's exciting to see IDRIC's leading role in accelerating the decarbonisation of the UK's industrial clusters, and also the advocacy for a whole systems approach. We will now move on to have a look at the Italian side of things by introducing Stephen McPhail from the Italian National Agency for New Technologies, Energy and Sustainable Economic Development. He will give us an overview of the Italian Hydrogen Valley, which will be a key project moving forward. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Let me just get this up full screen. And good morning to everybody. Good afternoon. Thanks for the invitation, and it's my pleasure to provide some insights on the deployment of large-scale hydrogen projects in Italy, namely those that we call hydrogen valleys or hydrogen hubs, and in particular also following up from the role that IDRIC has, the role that Enea as an association and a research center in Italy has in terms of really leveraging these initiatives and providing enabling services to the Italian industry in the hydrogen value chain. So just to give you an idea of what Enea does, let me just get this screen a little bit out of the way. There we go. So Enea is the National Agency for New Technologies, Energy and Sustainable Economic Development. We're a large-scale research and technology organization under the governance of the Ministry of Economic Development. As such, we support the ministry in preparing, for example, a number of research programs in the European and international arena, as well as for the national programming, for supporting the implementation of the hydrogen strategy. So one of the important roles was recently helping the negotiation of Italian industrial projects within the framework of the important projects of common European interest, the IPCEI, which led to two large-scale project clusters being submitted for notification to the European Commission this summer. Enea is also active in supporting the industrial associations, also in terms of developing the standards and regulations panorama to facilitate industrial deployment. We sit in the governing board of the National Hydrogen Association, H2IT, and we also coordinate the European Energy Research Alliance joint program on fuel cells and hydrogen. We also are in the international arena in the IEA, in the technology collaboration programs on hydrogen and the one on fuel cells. And finally, as regards international collaboration, we represent Italy in the mission innovation initiatives, the one that has just concluded and the one that is just being set up, where also the UK is has a leading role, which is the clean hydrogen mission. And I'd like to carry on from this particular initiative to focus on the Enea Kazacha Hydrogen Demo Valley project. So just to briefly recap on what Mission Innovation was about, it was an international initiative to accelerate the clean energy transition, and amongst the 8 challenges that were formulated to 2021, Challenge 8 was on clean hydrogen. This led to an international platform for the exchange of best practices and other experience related to the deployment of hydrogen valleys. And you can see the website of the platform there on the slide, and it is active. Just to remind you what we mean with a hydrogen valley, it is actually a geographical area which aggregates an ecosystem of hydrogen applications, usually combining production through storage and distribution to end use, and preferably integrating a large number of sectors. As a result of the first Mission Innovation initiative, the Italian Ministry of Economic Development has funded a project that we have submitted together with the Council of National Research on the development of open hydrogen hub testing platforms or validation platforms, at scale validation platforms, which will be developed with a budget of 17.5 million euro from here to 2023. So a few more details of this project in particular, and how this will be realized in the Enea Research Center of Kazacha. This is the largest research center of the Enea organization. It's located just northwest of Rome. And comprises over 100 buildings, and has a full network of roads, gas and electricity infrastructure, canteens, shuttles, and offices and laboratories, of course, hosting about 1,100 staff. And therefore actually providing a very good sort of ecosystem in itself, where to try and deploy a first concept of a so-called hydrogen valley. This is just to visualize where we are exactly. And this is an aerial view of the center. So the important thing is that here we are, of course, in a kind of a controlled environment, being a high-tech technology innovation center. What we see here highlighted in yellow is the distribution network of natural gas, which we have already pretty capillary within the research center. And we are going to superimpose on this the first hydrogen valley, which is supposed to integrate a number of technologies and applications as listed on the right, starting from the installation of a 200 kilowatt photovoltaic park, which will drive the valley downstream, which will consist, first of all, of the conversion of renewable electricity to renewable hydrogen through an industrial electrolyzer, significant amount of storage to deal with fluctuating energy, and then the distribution through dedicated hydrogen pipelines, but also through a dedicated blending pipeline, because for Italy it's also a priority to really see whether the significant infrastructure related to natural gas distribution can be leveraged for progressively increasing amounts of renewable hydrogen. And so we will be looking into blending facilities and seeing how different ratios of hydrogen to natural gas can function with different kinds of applications, both traditional legacy applications and innovative applications. An important end-use application of the pure hydrogen line will be a hydrogen refueling station, which will fuel some shuttles and forklift, and perhaps also a fleet of cars, and that is something to be looked into. But it will be the first publicly accessible hydrogen refueling station in the central Italian region. Furthermore, we're looking into, yeah, that's an image of the blending station. This is an image of the large-scale heating system that feeds the district heating network within Enea. So also looking at traditional combustion-based technologies and how a progressive increase of hydrogen contents in natural gas can work with boilers, existing boilers, but also looking at the combined heat and power technologies of the next generation. So looking at both pure hydrogen and blending in the feed of for co-generating systems at residential scale. In addition to this, we will be creating a number of test platforms or powering, pimping, shall we say, the test platforms that we already have on the testing, characterization, and design of hydrogen technologies, ranging from fuel cells, advanced electrolyzers, fuel cells for mobility, but also applications in turbines, innovative reforming technologies, as well as hydrogen separation and membrane technology. So this is a bird's eye overview of our project. Very ambitious, very exciting to really superimpose a radically new tree, a network of innovative technologies, and seeing whether that can really blend into a currently operational ecosystem, which obviously needs to keep on working. And this also provides, this is a brief, a very synoptic scheme of the valley. It's going to be there for a technological exercise, but also an exercise in terms of all the regulatory aspects connected to the deployment of such an ecosystem in a regularly functioning and a two-scale environment. So fully comprehensive and cross-cutting operation. So looking also to collaborate with the fire brigades and the standardization development organizations to work towards creating these best practices and guidelines towards further regulation of this sector in Italy and Europe. Just a quick pie chart for the budget. A lot of this will be dedicated to the actual generation of new infrastructure, and we hope to have the infrastructure ready by the end of the project, so that after the project is completed, we really get to work and provide our facility to industries who want to test their technologies in such an integrated environment, which is representative, but also superbly controlled by the competences and equipment that Enea has due to its mission. So we're ready to go. It officially launched the project in May. And so we're roaring to go and have already started first procedures to getting the feasibility studies done and the design of the infrastructure. So more information on that as we will proceed in the projects the next years. Just to give you zooming out to the Italian national system as a whole, and just to give you a brief idea of what sort of ideas are being developed in Italy on the hydrogen hub line. So we also already heard Stefano Raimondi mentioning the Brennero corridor, the A22 motorway. So extending this Brennero corridor from Bolzano down south is a priority project, but we have others as well, hydrogen valleys, the Volcamonic hydrogen valley, in the north of Italy, providing a corridor connecting west to east plain. Hydrogen Valley in Puglia, that's the southeast of Italy, where there's a large amount of renewable power plants, steel and industry applications which can be connected. Seaports are clearly very important for the Italian industrial and environmental ecosystem, and they provide unique opportunities for combining large-scale hydrogen production, the hard-to-abate applications of maritime transport, as well as looking into international trade and the issues of logistics. We have industrial technology test facilities being set up in Sicily with large-scale electrolyzer validation connected directly to the grid and fed by renewable power. Hydrogen island initiatives to facilitate energy autonomy in Italian islands. Of course, what underpins all these initiatives, or we hope to underpin these initiatives, with the demonstration platforms that I've just presented in the Casaccia Research Center, and there will be a similar one in Sicily, hosted by the Council of National Research. Most of these initiatives will find their negotiation within the already mentioned framework of the important projects of common European interest, and we're carrying on this this wave of integrated project architecture with other European Union member states in the next months. Just a few generic perspectives for hydrogen research in Italy. I already mentioned mission innovation. The new mission innovation challenge is ahead. It's not only ahead, it's already ongoing. UK is doing a great job there to really drive this new initiatives to tangible and ambitious results in the next 3 years. I also already mentioned the IPCIs. Stefano Raimondi mentioned the deployment of 3.5 billion euros for hydrogen value chain support. Furthermore, we feature prominently in the Clean Hydrogen for Europe public-private partnership in the next framework program for research funded by the European Union. And many Italian stakeholders feature also in the EU Clean Hydrogen Alliance. I think that's it from me today. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hand over to Caroline.
Thanks, Stephen. It's great to see INEA's involvement in the testing of various hydrogen applications across valleys. And I think we're already seeing synergies between Italy and the UK on that level, for instance, when it comes to the blending of hydrogen to decarbonize the gas grid. We are now moving on to our next speaker, Professor Tony Roskilly from Durham University, who will give us insights on hydrogen-fueled land freight transport. Over to you, Tony.
Hello, thanks very much. I work with Mercedes within IDRIC to decarbonize industrial clusters, but there is an integrated link with the transport of freight. I have a marine background myself, but I will talk today about transport to you, about land transport and about the possibilities for hydrogen-fueled land transport. So in July this year, the UK government published a plan to decarbonize transport. This proposed to phase out all non-zero emission road transport by 2040 and replace all diesel trains operating on the rail network. It will put forward a plan to decarbonize the UK road and rail freight system through further electrification and the development and adoption of battery and hydrogen technologies. It also committed investment to establishing the UK's first multimodal hydrogen transport hub, which will bring together government, industry and academia to focus on future hydrogen research and development, conduct real-world testing and demonstrations. This has been established in Teesside, in the heart of, as Mercedes mentioned, one of the largest industrial clusters in the UK, and the first hydrogen transport demonstration projects have just started this month. As was mentioned, just a month later, the UK government published its hydrogen strategy. It stated that the ambition to reach 5 gigawatts of low carbon hydrogen production capacity by 2030, the creation of new jobs in the sector, and the development of a sustainable supply chain in the production, storage, distribution, and use of hydrogen. A major focus, as was discussed, of that hydrogen strategy was on the decarbonisation of industry, the provision of heating, and the power sector. All of this, these are currently reliant on natural gas, but also it was consistent with the transport plan to remove fossil fuel use. It also recognises the vital role of hydrogen to fully decarbonise transport, and that is for heavy duty and long range applications. It committed to the deployment, trials and demonstration of hydrogen buses, HGVs, and for applications in shipping and aviation. One of the major challenges of land freight transport is the ability to store sufficient energy for their heavy duty cycles and the range requirements. As you can see from this table, diesel and gasoline fossil fuels are a pretty hard act to follow. They have very high gravimetric and volumetric energy densities. These liquid fuels are therefore, they're lightweight and very compact methods of storing large amounts of energy. And refueling times only take a few minutes. So unfortunately, current battery technology takes up over 30 times more space and is over 60 times more heavier. And recharging times are still very long in comparison. So when stored at high pressure at 700 bar, hydrogen, for example, provides potentially a better option. So it requires only 10 times more space and it's 7 times heavier when compared to storing diesel fuel. It also has the major advantage of taking a similar time to refuel. So that is a big advantage. Therefore, hydrogen has a major advantage in terms of payload and range, and further development in storage and fuel cells and novel combustion cycle powertrains are set to make further improvements. This graphic is from a detailed study by McKinsey and for the Hydrogen Council on the expected transport modes and energy sources. It shows the different transport modes and their relative weight and range requirements with the predicted energy vectors, which will dominate as we move towards net zero 2050. In the top right hand, the very heavy duty, very long range corner, it is expected that bio and hydrogen synthetic fuels will dominate fuel shipping and aviation. In the bottom left-hand corner, that's the light duty, low range corner. It is expected that battery technology will dominate. That leaves the middle sector, which is shown in light green, dominated by hydrogen powertrains for heavy duty, high range land transport. There is obviously overlaps in technology for certain applications across the norm. So that's why there's these stripes of different provision. I think this is quite an interesting way to demonstrate where it's believed going forward to 2050, the applications of electric vehicles, fuel cell vehicles, and synthetic fuels will take place. So the technical aspects of adopting hydrogen for land freight transport look promising, but what about the economics? There have been a number of studies looking into the economic case for hydrogen transport. This graph here is from the Connected Places Catapult in the UK study. They looked at the total cost of ownership of a 44-ton articulated HGV with a long distance duty cycle and compared this for different powertrain technologies. So comparing battery and hydrogen fuel cells and combustion technologies, and what this might look like out to 2050. So what this study showed was that the total cost of ownership for hydrogen fuel cells and battery electric powertrains were very similar, therefore indicating that the logistical and operational factors which have a major impact on powertrain adoption, as I discussed earlier, that's the range, the weight, the volume, and the refueling time, will have overriding factors and therefore make hydrogen use potentially much more favorable. I just wanted to briefly introduce Network H2, a network for hydrogen fuel transportation, which I lead. It has been funded by the UKRI, and the key objectives are to maximize impact, communicate and share best practice, and disseminate research and development information and data. The network is capturing the state of the art and identifying the research challenges, the incentives, and the barriers to hydrogen fuel transportation. We are currently producing a research and development roadmap, which is going to be published fairly soon. Based on the results of this work, the network is funding cutting-edge projects to provide solutions to the identified challenges. It provides a forum for all stakeholders and fosters long-term collaborations, stimulates knowledge transfer for mutual benefit. And this is done through our website, our monthly webinars, workshops, and conferences and secondments that we organize. The network activities are aligned with 8 challenge themes: the whole cycle, the whole transport and energy system. You cannot decouple transport from the energy system. Pathways to sustainable, sorry about that. Pathways to sustainable hydrogen production and distribution, the development of compact and lightweight hydrogen storage, compact and lightweight onboard hydrogen energy devices, improved lightweight electrified powertrains, compatibility of materials and safety, multimodal transport, logistics and autonomy, and finally policy, economics, and societal impacts. Currently, the network is funding research projects on a number of topics, and I've highlighted some here. One on the techno-economic feasibility study of hydrogen fueled freight transportation, one developing a compact and highly efficient onboard ammonia cracking system to produce hydrogen, the assessment of electrochemical hydrogen pumps for deblending and purification of hydrogen, computation analysis of the thermal engines and the use of hydrogen in heavy duty transport applications, and the strategic hydrogen refueling infrastructure. So basically modeling and analyzing where hydrogen infrastructure, refueling infrastructure across the whole of the UK is best placed. So finally, in summary, so there is, it is recognized by the UK government and industry that hydrogen will play an important role in the full decarbonisation of transport. In the short term, that's in heavy duty and long range applications, including HGV and train freight, but also obviously in shipping and aviation. So taking into account the predicted total cost of ownership and also the levelized cost of hydrogen through mass manufacturing improvements in technology, this will enable the adoption of hydrogen powertrains for land freight transport applications. The major challenge around hydrogen fuel transportations are being addressed by world-leading research and development in the UK, which is supported by the Network H2. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Tony, for highlighting and dissecting the vital role that hydrogen will play in decarbonizing various modes of heavy-duty transport, ranging from road to maritime and aviation. We will now move on to our next and final speaker of the panel, Mr. Philip Hemmens, who is Head of Northern Europe Management at Eni and will present a case study of the HyNet Northwest project. Over to you, Philip.
Thank you very much. Okay, I've got to just control that. Right, hopefully you can see that. Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon to Italy. It's interesting coming after so many presentations that deal with some of the concepts here that I'll be discussing, because Madam Ambassador noted how the UK had the right geology and industry clusters in order to start the hydrogen economy. And Mercedes again was also talking about how probably it will be best to start hydrogen within clusters. What I'm going to present to you this morning very briefly will be the work that ENI has been doing in collaboration with a number of companies, up to 30 manufacturing companies in the northwest of England and North Wales, to decarbonize the area and to start to generate the hydrogen economy. Given the audience, I would like to say that the work so far, I appreciate that UKRI has funded the consortium to £33 million, and we have put 39 million of our own money into developing the front-end engineering of some of what I'm going to talk to you about. The project is actually currently being reviewed by BEIS as part of its Track 1 agenda for trying to get at least 2 clusters underway by 2025. If we get Track 1 funding, we can take FID on this project. So we can take the investment decision on this project in 23 and be up and running in 25. So I'll just, I'm trying to do the next slide, right. So I think Mercedes showed you a good slide where she had 5 million tons a year being captured in the Merseyside area. This is focusing in on the Merseyside area. You will see that a lot of the activity is focused around the large white blob there, the Stanlow area, where there is refineries, there are fertilizer plants, and there are many manufacturing facilities. The red line you see there is a carbon CO2 pipeline that is going through Connors Quay and Point of Ayre in North Wales out to 3 depleted gas fields that ENI operates, which we would hope to start storing CO2 in 2025. Now, this is about kickstarting the hydrogen economy and the decarbonisation of the area through using blue hydrogen. At the ESAR refinery, the Progressive Energy and ESAR are already in front-end engineering with Johnson Matthey low carbon hydrogen, where they should be ready with their first hydrogen plant in 2025. But also this is about once that is ready, it will be used for the Stanlow refinery, but then they're working with Cadent, who are repurposing and building hydrogen network in the region for as we build up the capacity of the hydrogen in the area. If we succeed in what we're trying to do, we should meet about 80% of the government's target for 2030 just in this area alone. So it gives you an idea of the capacity of the UK. I'll move on to the next one. Okay, whoops, how do I go back? Right. Now, I just wanted to show you this because ENI have the ability to capture and store carbon, and we will do that directly. And we will do that directly from such things as fertilizer plants, such things as cement plants that are already within our consortium. But we are then working with the people who are ready to manufacture the hydrogen, such that we can anticipate that we get this type of buildup of CO2. Well, this is the demand from our cluster. Our first project we're planning on will be for 4.5 million tons a year, and we can do that at a low capital cost, because we are going to reuse not only pipelines, but even some of the offshore wells and platforms. So our capex on this is low. So if you like, the regret cost of this would be low, and the actual cost of capturing the CO2 and transporting it would be highly competitive. You will see with the companies down the right-hand side of this that we've got not only hydrogen, fertilizer, we've got biofuel, we've got energy from waste, we've got cement. So it is a mixture of industry that wants to capture its carbon, and then we move on to the hydrogen. Today is about hydrogen, so I will move on to hydrogen now. Part of the HyNet system is that the first plant should be operational by 2025 with 350 megawatts. That will be used around the Stanlow refinery and in adjacent industry. One of the keys with clusters is because the industry is close together, it means that the infrastructure that you have to build to connect them is much reduced and the costs can be shared, which is why I would agree with Mercedes that the place to kickstart this hydrogen economy is in these clusters. Then by 2026, we should have another 700 megawatt facility, where then the network will start to be expanded into the Liverpool City region, Chester, Warrington, Greater Manchester. Also, we have Innovian as part of our consortium, and they will be looking for hydrogen storage in salt caverns that are local, so that we can have a good circle of building up hydrogen capacity. it goes back to, we have the offshore storage readily available in depleted gas fields, and we even have the onshore storage available in salt caverns. Then, assuming that we could do well with plant 1 and plant 2, the plan would be that we have a third plant operational by 2028 and a fourth plant by 2030, such that we can build an anticipated capacity of hydrogen, of blue hydrogen, of about 4 gigawatts by 2030. I would also say that ENI at the Connors Quay plant is working with Uniper also on further blue hydrogen and on green hydrogen for North Wales up there. So if you like, almost in summary, we think that this is very straightforward, the distinctive factors of HyNet. We have safe and reliable solution for CO2 storage, thanks to these depleted reservoirs. They're only 30 kilometers offshore of Liverpool Bay. There are 3 reservoirs, so that reduces risk. They're fully depleted, and we obviously have extensive knowledge of the whole geology and therefore the risk of storage there. We can, if we get on track 1, put on track 1 by BEIS, have our CCS ready by early 2025. And we think because of the reutilization and redeployment of our existing facilities, we can be the lowest cost per ton CCS in the UK. Now, in that sense, this has to be an extremely good place to start to generate decarbonisation and the hydrogen economy. The benefits, we have Chester University as part of our consortium, and they work on the economic benefits. The economic benefits we see for the UK are about 2.8 billion pounds during the period through to 2030, and then about 110 million per annum of operational expenditure after that. One of the keys with all of this is there are 340,000 manufacturing jobs in the region. The companies who employ those people know they need to decarbonize and want to decarbonize. So part of doing this is very focused on maintaining those manufacturing jobs. But also, we estimate we will create about 6,000 permanent jobs in the northwest of England and in North Wales through this period. Now, the lovely thing about this project is by 2030, if we go according to plan, we will be taking 25% of all the CO2 out of the region. So we will be clearing the air. I think this just summarizes it. But what I would say, 1 second, Caroline, I'm running out of time, I know. But oops, just one other slide. No, I haven't. It wasn't on there. Oh, there we go. I mean, just to tell you, ENI is leading this with the UK government, with BEIS, with the consortium. But these are the companies that are invested in making this happen and want this to happen. And I think you can see a number of very serious brand names, very serious manufacturing companies here that want to make this happen. So sorry, Caroline, I'm out of time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Philip, for sharing this case study on one of the UK's most promising hydrogen clusters. We will now move on to the second Q&A. We will start with a question from Mario to Stephen McPhail, which is it under investigation, the possibility to develop a fully decarbonized kind of district heating, for example, using hydrogen to produce heat?
Well, for sure, the technology is there, and the Italian industry is actually a leader in heating appliances across Europe. They are thoroughly committed to looking at also a 100% hydrogen solution, both for residential heating and for industrial heating. So there's a lot of development in that. The interesting in an air, we will be looking at validating these technologies, but we will also be looking at how to generate fully decarbonized methane or natural gas replacement. So looking at the synthesis of renewable CO2 captured perhaps from anaerobic digestion gases with renewable hydrogen from electrolysis. And synthesizes into fully compatible methane, shall we say. So there's a number of options to guarantee the decarbonization of heat as well, both in terms of development of end appliances that are compatible with blends of hydrogen and natural gas, and progressing to fully renewable hydrogen, as well as substituting the actual natural gas with fully renewable fuels.
Thanks, Stephen. We'll now move on to two questions for Mercedes. One is from Antonino, asking if there's a route for IDRIC to set up direct collaborations with Italian research centers or industrial clusters in Italy, or if activities are restricted to UK institutions and industry.
So thank you. With respect to the establishing collaborations, yes, we'll be delighted to do so. And that was one of the points I was trying to raise towards the end of my presentation. So I did give the contact details for IDRIC in terms of where you can reach us, where you can visit our website. And I think for IDRIC, what we need to be clear is that the activities that we do, there is an impact in the industrial clusters in the UK. But it was clear from what we heard today in the presentations that many of the challenges and the opportunities they are very similar in UK and Italy. So I think it's a huge opportunity that we work together and we learn from each other. So in short, yes, absolutely. Just kind of drop us a line and we'll find the best way that we can work together.
Thanks. The next question for you is if you think the technology research advances in safety are advanced enough to be implemented in industry and amongst populated clusters.
Okay, so I think it was clear from the presentation from Philip, and we have a number of other clusters as well developing hydrogen or CCUS projects, that we can start deploying some of those technologies today, and that's in fact why these feed studies and these things are happening. So I think I want to make clear that these technologies, the technologies that we have that are ready to do deployment today, the role of IDRIC is that by doing research and innovation, we can actually reduce the cost, the risk, the timelines, and we can really accelerate a much wider deployment. So I hope that's clear. It's not like we don't have them, it's that we can actually, research and innovation can help us to accelerate a much wider deployment that could be applicable to a much wider number of clusters and also to disperse sites across clusters. I think, as Philip pointed out, one of the really advantages of working with clusters is that they are so diverse. You are not just working with one sector. You are working with steel, you're working with cement, you're working with petrochemicals, you're working with refineries. So the opportunities to take these messages and really get them across and disperse sites is really something that IDRIC is very keen on happening. There are issues, and this is what we are working in IDRIC right now around standards, how we can actually ensure that we have regulatory frameworks in place, how we can make sure that actually we have the storage capacity needed, because we are talking about ramping up activities at the very highest speed in hydrogen and producing a lot more that will have to be stored in places that traditionally we haven't looked to store it. We'll need to transport it, so networks are going to be important. And then let's not forget, what Tony was telling us, we're going to be producing hydrogen for an application. So how that hydrogen is going to be used, all the way from fuel flexibility to decarbonize a wide range of sectors. Again, I think Tony was very clear in his presentation around the opportunities for hydrogen to decarbonize the transport sector. So I'm going to stop here. I could talk for hours, as you probably realize, but I think it's better I stop here, and I hope that answered the question.
Thanks, Mercedes. We will now move on to a question that is a bit more open, and I would like to nominate Tony to have a first go at it. The question is from Andrea about, it is well known that the actual environmental sustainability of hydrogen as an energy vector strongly depends on how it is produced. And they would appreciate someone commenting on the role of environmental assessment methods and tools, such as life cycle assessment in this context, and also in support of political and investment choices, and how many trade-offs between different environmental impacts could there be to deal with.
Okay, just to follow up on Mercedes' question, actually early one, is that industrial clusters are already using hydrogen. They've been using hydrogen all the time. Sarvec on Teesside have actually have a byproduct of hydrogen from their polyethylene production, and there's a 70-kilometer hydrogen network across the whole of Teesside. So they're very used to that. So it's just actually we've got to advance it and benefit and let all industry benefit from that capability. In terms of these types of tools like life cycle assessment, so my team have utilized LCA to look at the production of algae fuels, also in European projects, looking at integration of renewables into shipping, for example. So these are really very valuable tools to use. They can help you decide on different options and different routes, and that can go hand in hand with financial decisions, political decisions. It's very important. I think the thing is that it's like any modeling, though. Modeling is a prediction. It's not real. It's not real life. It's not absolutely accurate. And with LCA and other tools like that, their validity is really dependent on the databases, and I think there's a lot of work still to be done on sufficient accuracy in databases on materials and things like that, and methodology. And so there is work being done on that, but I still think that it is important to look at the kind of cradle to grave assessment of what we plan to do in the future.
Thanks, Tony. We now have a question to Philip. Just a moment. From Stefano. The question is about, in the view of replicating the HyNet Northwest experience in other areas, what are the main critical requirements for depleted oil and gas fields to be used for CO2 sequestration?
Okay. What I would say is, right, to answer it absolutely clearly, you have to be able to see very clear geological closure on the structures so that you don't expect to have outcrops of the structures anywhere. There should be a lack of or minimum faulting within the structures so that it is clear that the gas will stay within the reservoirs. And I would also say that it's preferable that over the long-term history, as you've been producing those fields, that you can see them acting, if you like, as a tank, so that you know they are limited. And in the case of gas fields, that you haven't had water ingress into them. But bottom line is, make sure you've got good quality 4D seismic over the field, and try to make sure they're minimum escape paths for the CO2. And when you fill it with CO2, don't go above the original reservoir pressure of the fluid that was in there in the first place. In the case of Liverpool Bay, we're only going to go to 80% of the original reservoir pressure. I hope that answers it for Stefano.
Thank you so much.
Grazie.
Thank you very much, Philip. Unfortunately, we've run out of time and have to close the Q&A session, and apologies for going slightly over. I will now hand over to Katrina Graham, HM Consul General and Italy Director at the UK's Department for International Trade, for our closing remarks. Over to you, Katrina.
Thank you so much, Caroline. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really proud to share this closing moment with you all as we reflect on what all of these experts have said today about the fuel of the stars, as I think we like to call it. It's been absolutely clear from what we've heard today just how important hydrogen is going to be as one of the building blocks of the future low carbon economy, and particularly in these hard to abate sectors. We really need this innovation, and so it's fantastic to hear that there is so much going on and so much expertise in both the UK and Italy that's going to make this future possible. As many of you know, Italy is of course the UK's partner in the presidency of the COP26 coming up in Glasgow. I'm speaking from Milan, where the Italian government is hosting the pre-COP as we speak. And so in this important moment for our two countries, I'd also just like to thank in particular our Italian partners for their contribution and collaboration to help us with this shared challenge. And thank you also to all the speakers today for sharing your fantastic expertise, both from British and Italian organisations and universities. It's been absolutely fantastic to hear from you all. I've certainly learnt a great deal. In drawing a few conclusions from what we've heard today, I just wanted to touch on a few specific points that struck me from today's dialogue. The first is that the UK and Italy, we're very much aligned in the policy position on the future of hydrogen in our economy. The UK is aiming for 5 gigawatts of low carbon hydrogen production by 2030 for use across the entire economy as part of our Prime Minister's plan for a green industrial revolution. The plan is to apply hydrogen for industry, for transport, for power and homes, also aiming to develop the first town heated entirely by hydrogen by the end of the decade. So the UK, as all of you know, has opted for a twin track approach, so supporting both green and blue hydrogen production alongside other potential production routes in the future. So we think this is the best way to enable the rapid growth of the sector whilst bringing down costs. But Italy is very much on the same page. The Italian government's envisaging also reaching 5 gigawatts of electrolysis capacity for hydrogen production, and also in the same period by 2030, with about 2% of final energy consumption coming from hydrogen by that date, rising to 20% by 2050. So some really ambitious plans here in Italy for the future of this fuel as well. So that's the first point, that the UK and Italy, we've got similar goals, similar ambitious goals, and I'd suggest that those goals are only achievable with the close collaboration between our experts that we've seen in this dialogue today. So I hope this will be the first of many such conversations to help us to get to that point. The second thing that struck me is that businesses and universities have got a really key role working together for us to achieve this transition. This isn't something that can be done just through government policymakers coming up with ideas. And this is a theme that we've talked about throughout this week here in Milan at the pre-COP, but this green future ahead of us is also an opportunity. It's a transition that will bring growth to our economies and our organizations. It's this green investment ahead of us. It makes a good moral sense, but it also makes good business sense. And the shift to net zero is clearly an opportunity to drive and enhance our economies to a more sustainable position in the future, to build the growth that we need to see after the global pandemic. The UK is a good example of that growth over the last 30 years. the UK economy has grown by 78%, but at the same time, we've reduced emissions by 44%. So the UK's Green Industrial Revolution is a plan to do more of the same, to boost jobs in the low carbon sector to 2 million jobs by 2030. So thus achieving this transition, but bringing our economy the growth we want to see at the same time. And the third point I'd just like to bring out is, gosh, I mean, it's incredible to hear how active clearly both the UK and Italy businesses and universities are in this sector. We've heard some really fantastic concrete examples of that today. In Italy, the ENEA's Hydrogen Demo Valley project, a really leading hub for testing and demonstration of these technologies. In the UK, world-leading engineering centres, the Research Centre for Carbon Solutions in Edinburgh, in Durham, the Energy Institute, just some examples, but at the forefront of research in this field. And also what we've just heard about the UK's HyNet project, really exciting. This initiative has the potential to reduce carbon dioxide emissions by 10 million tonnes every year by 2030. It's a really exciting project, and I wish all a success to those of you who are involved in it. We're very proud to have you part of it. I think, by the way, that my video has turned off, but I don't know if that's a technical error. Never mind, you'll just have to look at my name. But finally, a big thanks to those of you involved in that research in those projects. It's exciting to see the fields of application for hydrogen now ranging much more broadly than they were, just a few years ago, from heating to mobility to industry. This is clearly an area that's going to cut across all sectors of our economy. So there's more to do, certainly, but I think the examples we've heard about today really show how, through focused collaboration between our governments, but also our businesses and our academic institutions, we can make real progress together. And I hope this will be the beginning of more of that. I'd like to just remind everybody that those who are wishing to learn more about these opportunities offered by the British market, those of you in Italy looking for that, please get in contact with my team, my fantastic team at the consulate and the embassy in Rome. We are here to support these partnerships. So we're looking forward to working more with you in achieving that. And we're looking forward to working with all of you between the conference now in Milan and the COP26 in Glasgow. And the work will not stop there, continuing afterwards. This is clearly going to be a big theme of our bilateral work in the years to come. Thank you again for convening here today on the screens, and I wish you all the best of luck with this most important work. Grazie mille.
Thanks, Katrina. I can only echo your words by thanking our speakers for generously offering their time today, and also our audience for engaging in what has turned out to be a lively debate. My colleagues in Milan will aim to share the presentations and contact details of our speakers with you if you have any follow-up questions or would just simply like to get in touch. Before we close the event, I'd like to say a few words about my team, which is the Hydrogen and Carbon Capture team based at the Department for International Trade in London. We maintain an extensive list of projects which we are keen to discuss with those interested in FDI or potential partnerships with UK hydrogen companies. Due to our engagements, we have a network of industry contacts and we'd be happy to facilitate introductions. Please don't hesitate to contact me or colleagues in Italy if you'd like to discuss. Goodbye.